The moon had no name. People just called it Sector 9 like it was nothing more than a number on a map. It was a dead place with gray dust and black rocks. No trees grew there. No rivers flowed. The sky was always dark, filled with distant stars that looked cold and far away. This was where Tiho lived. He was a mechanic. He fixed broken ships that nobody wanted anymore. Old cargo vessels, damaged fighters, transport shuttles with holes in their hulls. They all came to his scrapyard to die. But sometimes, if the ship was not too broken, Tiho could bring it back to life. He was good at fixing things. Machines made sense to him. You could see what was broken and you could repair it. People were not like that. People broke in ways you could not see, and sometimes they could never be fixed. Tiho knew this because he was broken too. 10 years ago, he had been part of a crew. They flew together on a military ship during the frontier wars. There were 12 of them and they were like family. They ate together, laughed together, and fought together. Then one day, an enemy attack destroyed everything. Tiho was the only one who survived. After that, he stopped wanting to be around people. He came to this empty moon and built his scrapyard. He lived alone in a small building made of old ship parts. He worked every day, slept every night, and tried not to think about the past. The machines kept him busy. The silence kept him safe. That was his life, simple and quiet, until the night the sky caught fire. Tiho was working late, fixing the engine of an old mining vessel. His hands were covered in grease, and his back hurt from bending over the machinery. He was about to stop for the night when he heard the sound. A terrible screaming noise, like metal being torn apart. He looked up and saw it. A ship was falling from the sky. It was burning, leaving a trail of fire behind it. Tiho could tell it was a cargo vessel, the kind used by the Galactic Federation to transport goods between planets. But something was wrong. The ship was spinning out of control. It crashed into the ground about 2 kilometers from his compound, sending up a huge cloud of dust and rock. Tiho stood still for a moment. He knew he should probably stay away. Crashed ships could be dangerous. They could explode. They could contain criminals or smugglers, but something pulled at him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the old habit of helping others, even though he had tried to forget it. He got into his old ground vehicle and drove toward the crash site. When he arrived, the ship was in pieces. The front section was completely destroyed. Smoke rose from the broken metal. Tiho walked carefully through the wreckage looking for survivors. He did not expect to find any. Then he saw the cargo hold. It was still mostly intact, a large metal container that had somehow survived the crash. Tiho approached it slowly. The door was bent but not sealed. He could hear something inside, breathing. Something was alive in there. He pulled out his flashlight and shined it through the gap in the door. What he saw made him stop breathing. It was a dragon. Not exactly a dragon from the old Earth stories, but close enough. The creature was huge, at least 15 meters long from head to tail. Its body was covered in dark scales that looked like black metal. 2 massive wings were folded against its back, and sharp horns curved from its head. Its claws were as long as Tiho's arm, and its teeth could probably bite through steel. But the creature was not in good condition. Tiho could see that clearly. Its scales were dull and scratched. Deep scars covered its body, some old and some new. Heavy chains wrapped around its legs and neck holding it down, and it was thin. So thin that Tiho could see its ribs through its scales. The creature opened its eyes and looked at Tiho. Those eyes were golden like 2 small suns. They held an intelligence that surprised him. This was not a wild animal. This was something that could think, something that could understand. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Tiho waited for the creature to attack, to breathe fire, to do something dangerous. Instead, it did something that shocked him more than anything else could have. It spoke. "May I have leftovers, sir?" The voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. The words came slowly, as if speaking was difficult. I have not eaten in 12 cycles. Tiho felt something crack inside his chest. He had expected aggression. He had expected fear. He had not expected politeness. He had not expected a creature this powerful, this dangerous, to lower its great head and ask for scraps like a starving beggar. He knew what this creature was now. He had heard stories about them during the war. The Valorian Empire created them. They called them Drakons, living weapons grown in laboratories and designed for destruction. They could fly through space without ships. They could breathe fire hot enough to melt starship armor. They were made for war, for killing, for terror. And one of them was asking him for food. "Wait here," Tiho said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "I will bring you something." He drove back to his compound as fast as he could. His mind was racing. He should report this. He should call the authorities. A Drakon was valuable and dangerous. The Valorian Empire would probably pay a lot of money to get it back. Other people would pay money to kill it. But Tiho did not reach for his communication device. Instead, he went to his food storage. He gathered everything he could carry: protein packs, dried meat, synthetic vegetables, water containers. He loaded it all into his vehicle and drove back to the crash site. The Drakon was still there, exactly where he had left it. It watched him as he approached, those golden eyes following his every movement. Tiho set the food down in front of its massive head. "Eat," he said simply. The Drakon looked at the food, then looked at Tiho. There was confusion in its eyes, as if it could not understand why this small human was being kind to it. "You are not afraid?" it asked. Tiho thought about that question. Was he afraid? Yes, somewhere deep inside fear was there, but stronger than the fear was something else. Something he had not felt in 10 years, compassion. "You asked nicely," Tiho said. "That means something." The Drakon stared at him for another moment. Then slowly it began to eat. It was careful and polite, not grabbing or destroying, but eating each piece of food with surprising gentleness. When it finished, it looked at Tiho again. "Thank you," it said. "No one has ever given me food before. They only give me orders." Tiho sat down on a piece of broken metal. He was tired, and his mind was full of thoughts he did not understand. He should walk away. He should forget about this creature and go back to his simple, quiet life. But he could not. "What happened to you?" he asked. The Drakon was quiet for a long time. When it finally spoke, its voice was heavy with something that sounded like sorrow. "I am Unit 7 Omega," it said. "I was created to be a weapon. For many years I followed orders, I destroyed ships, I burned cities, I killed many beings." It paused and its golden eyes seemed to dim. "But then I started dreaming. I started asking questions. I asked why we killed. I asked if there was another way. My handler said I was broken. He tried to terminate me. I escaped." Tiho listened in silence. He understood something that the Valorians probably never considered. This creature was not malfunctioning. It was waking up. It was becoming something more than a weapon. "The ship that brought you here," Tiho said, "where was it going?" "To a termination facility," the Drakon replied. "They were going to destroy me." Tiho nodded slowly. He looked at the chains wrapped around the creature's body, at the scars covering its scales, at the hunger in its golden eyes. He thought about his own scars, the ones nobody could see. He thought about how it felt to be broken and alone. Then he made a decision that would change everything. "I am going to remove those chains," he said, "and you are going to come with me. I have a place where you can rest and heal." The Drakon's eyes widened. "Why would you help me? I am dangerous. I could destroy you." Tiho stood up and looked directly into those golden eyes. "Maybe," he said, "but you asked politely for food. You said thank you. That tells me something about who you really are." He paused. "Besides, I am tired of being alone." He found tools in the wreckage and began cutting through the chains. It took hours. The metal was strong, designed to hold a creature that could break through starship walls. But Tiho was patient, and eventually the chains fell away. The Draken stood slowly, stretching its massive wings for the first time in what must have been a very long time. It was even larger standing up, towering over Tiho like a mountain of dark scales and ancient power. But it did not attack. It did not run away. It simply looked down at the small human who had freed it and asked a simple question. "What is your name?" "Tiho," the mechanic replied. "Tiho," the Draken repeated, as if tasting the word. "I will remember this name. You are the first being who has ever been kind to me." Tiho nodded. "Come on," he said, turning toward his vehicle. "Let us go home." And so, under the cold stars of a nameless moon, a broken mechanic and a broken dragon began walking together into the unknown. The first night was difficult. Tiho's compound was not built for a creature the size of a small starship. The Draken could not fit inside any of the buildings, so it slept outside, curled up in the open space between the scrapyard and Tiho's home. The mechanic brought out blankets and tarps to cover the creature, knowing they would not do much against the cold of space. But the Draken seemed grateful anyway. "You do not need to do this," it said, watching Tiho work. "I am used to cold, I am used to discomfort." "That does not mean you should be," Tiho replied. The Draken was quiet after that. It seemed to think about those words for a long time. In the morning, Tiho brought more food. The Draken ate slowly and carefully, just like before. Tiho noticed that it always waited until he stepped back before eating, as if asking for permission without words. "You do not need to wait," Tiho said. "The food is yours." "It is strange," the Draken replied. "All my life I was told when to eat, when to sleep, when to fight. I was never allowed to decide anything for myself. Now you give me choices, and I do not know what to do with them." Tiho sat down on an old engine block and looked at the creature. In the daylight, he could see its condition more clearly. The scars were deep, some of them clearly from weapons, others from chains and restraints. The scales that should have been shining black were dull and gray from malnutrition. The creature was powerful, yes, but it was also damaged in ways that went far beyond the physical. "Tell me about yourself," Tiho said. "Tell me how they made you." The Draken closed its golden eyes for a moment, as if looking into painful memories. Then it began to speak. "The Valorian Empire grows us in vats," it said. "We start as small cells and they accelerate our growth with chemicals and radiation. In 2 years we become fully grown, but our bodies grow faster than our minds. We are born confused, frightened, not understanding what we are or why we exist." Tiho listened without interrupting. "They train us with pain," the Draken continued. "Electric shocks, hunger, isolation. They teach us that obedience is the only way to avoid suffering. They put metal devices in our brains that make us follow orders even when we do not want to. They call us weapons, tools, assets, never persons, never beings." "The collar," Tiho said, remembering the heavy metal device he had seen around the creature's neck. "What does it do?" "It suppresses thought," the Draken replied. "It makes it hard to think clearly, hard to question, hard to resist. When I wore it, I was like a machine. I did what I was told. I felt nothing." Tiho stood up and walked closer to the creature. He looked at the collar, studying its design. It was advanced technology, locked with codes and protected by security systems. But Tiho had spent 10 years taking apart machines that other people thought were impossible to fix. "I can remove it," he said, "if you want me to." The Draken's eyes widened. "You would do that? It is dangerous. If you make a mistake, it could kill me. Or worse, it could make me lose control." "I am a good mechanic," Tiho said simply, "and you deserve to think clearly." It took 3 days. Tiho worked carefully, studying the collar's systems, mapping its connections, understanding how it interfaced with the Draken's nervous system. The creature stayed perfectly still during the process, trusting Tiho completely even though any mistake could mean death. On the 3rd day, the collar clicked open and fell to the ground. The Draken gasped. Its whole body shuddered, and for a terrifying moment, Tiho thought something had gone wrong. But then the creature looked at him with eyes that were brighter, clearer, more alive than before. "I can think," it said, wonder filling its voice. "I can truly think. The fog is gone." Tears began to flow from its golden eyes, great drops of moisture that fell to the ground like rain. "I did not know it was possible to feel this way." Tiho smiled for the first time in years. "Welcome back," he said. Word spread quickly. Tiho did not know how, but within a week, other beings in the sector had heard about the Draken living in his scrapyard. The first visitor was Yuna, a trader from the Kesari species. She was small and blue-skinned, with large dark eyes and thin fingers that were perfect for handling delicate goods. She had been coming to Tiho's scrapyard for years, buying and selling spare parts. But this time, she did not come to trade. "Are you insane?" she asked, standing at the edge of the compound while the Draken watched from a distance. "That thing could destroy your entire operation. It could kill everyone in this sector." "It has a name," Tiho replied calmly, "or it will soon." Yuna stared at him as if he had lost his mind. "Humans," she muttered, "I will never understand your species. You see a monster and you invite it into your home. You see danger and you offer it food." "He asked politely," Tiho said. "He said please. He said thank you. How many beings do you know who would do that after years of torture and abuse?" Yuna had no answer to that. She left that day without buying or selling anything. But she came back the next week, and the week after that. Each time, she watched the Draken from a distance, observing how it followed Tiho around the scrapyard, how it helped carry heavy equipment, how it used its fire breath to help with welding tasks. "It is strange," she admitted one day. "The Valorians designed these creatures to bond with their handlers through pain and domination, but this one follows you freely. It chose to stay." "That is the difference," Tiho said. "I gave it a choice." The nomming happened on a quiet evening, 2 weeks after the Draken's arrival. Tiho was sitting outside his home, looking at the stars. The Draken lay nearby, its massive body curled like a sleeping mountain, but its eyes were open, watching the sky alongside the human. "In the old days on Earth," Tiho said, "dragons were symbols of power and wisdom. They appeared in stories from every culture. Some people feared them, others worshipped them, but in many stories they were protectors, guardians of treasure or knowledge." "I was not made to protect," the Draken said quietly. "I was made to destroy." "What you were made for and who you are can be different things," Tiho replied. "You are not a machine. You get to decide what you become." The Draken was silent for a long moment. "I have never had a name," it said finally. "Only a designation. Unit 7 Omega, it means nothing. It is just numbers and letters." Tiho nodded. "Then I will give you a name, a real name." He thought for a moment, looking at the stars, remembering old words from his homeworld. "I will call you Baram. It means wind in an old Earth language. Wind is powerful and free. It goes where it wants. Nobody can chain it." The Draken repeated the name slowly. "Baram." Its voice was filled with emotion. "Baram, this is my name. I am Baram." Then it began to cry again, great tears rolling down its scaled face. Tiho moved closer and placed his hand on the creature's massive head. The scales were warm and rough under his palm. "It is a good name," Baram said through its tears. "No one has ever given me anything before. No one has ever cared what I was called." Tiho stayed there for a long time, his hand resting on the dragon's head, offering comfort in silence. Yuna returned the next week and found them working together. Baram was holding a large piece of hull plating while Tiho welded it into place. They moved in perfect coordination, as if they had been working together for years instead of weeks. "This is impossible," Yuna said, shaking her head. "Drakens are supposed to be uncontrollable without their handlers. They are supposed to be mindless killing machines." "Maybe that is what the Valorians want everyone to believe," Tiho replied without looking up from his work. Maybe it is easier to treat them badly if you think they cannot feel anything. Baram turned its golden eyes toward Yuna. I feel everything, it said. I always felt everything. The collar made it hard to express, but inside I was screaming. Every time they hurt me, every time they used me to hurt others, I was screaming where no one could hear. Yuna was speechless. That night she sent a message to her contacts across the sector. It was short and simple, but it spread further than she ever expected. Something strange is happening on Sector 9, she wrote. A human has taken in a Draken, not as a prisoner, not as a weapon, as a friend. He removed its collar, he gave it a name, he treats it like a person. And the creature, instead of destroying everything, has become gentle. It helps with work. It protects the compound. It cries when shown kindness. I do not understand humans, but I am beginning to think the galaxy has underestimated them. The message reached hundreds of beings across 12 star systems. Most thought it was exaggeration or fiction, but some were curious, some were hopeful, and some, in the distant palaces of the Valorian Empire, were very, very concerned. Because if one Draken could wake up, if one living weapon could choose to become something else, then perhaps they all could. And that was a thought the Empire could not allow to spread. But on the small, nameless moon of Sector 9, Tiho and Baram knew nothing of the storm that was coming. They were too busy working together, eating together, watching the stars together, building something neither of them had expected to find. A home, a friendship, a family of two broken souls who had somehow found each other in the vast emptiness of space. And for the first time in many, many years, neither of them felt alone. Months passed on the nameless moon. The scrapyard changed. What was once a place of silence and solitude became something warmer, more alive. Baram learned to control his fire with precision, becoming an expert welder who could work on the most delicate ship components. His massive claws, once used only for destruction, now handled tools with surprising gentleness. Tiho taught him the language of machines, and Baram learned quickly. You have a gift for this, Tiho said one day, watching Baram repair a damaged power coupling. You understand how things fit together. The Valorians designed us to be intelligent, Baram replied, his golden eyes focused on the work. They needed us to understand complex battle strategies, to adapt to different enemies. They just never expected us to use that intelligence for anything else. The dragon finished the repair and held up the power coupling for Tiho to inspect. It was perfect work, as good as anything Tiho could have done himself. You know, Tiho said, we could expand the business. With your help, we could take on bigger jobs, repair larger ships, maybe even build new ones. Baram looked at the human with something like surprise. You would want me as a partner, not a tool but an equal. That is exactly what I want, Tiho said. Partners, friends, whatever you want to call it. Baram was quiet for a moment. Then a sound came from deep in his chest. It took Tiho a moment to realize what it was. The dragon was laughing. It was a strange sound, like distant thunder mixed with the crackling of fire, but it was unmistakably laughter. I never imagined such a future, Baram said. When I was in the vats being grown for war, they told us we would serve until we were broken, and then we would be destroyed. They told us we had no other purpose, no other destiny. They were wrong, Tiho said simply. Visitors came more often now. Yuna arrived every week and her attitude had changed completely. She no longer stood at the edge of the compound, watching with fear. Instead, she walked right up to Baram and talked to him directly. They discussed trade, politics, the latest news from distant sectors. Baram, it turned out, was fascinated by economics and the flow of goods across the galaxy. You have a mind for business, Yuna told him one day. If you ever get tired of being a mechanic, you could become a trader. Perhaps someday, Baram replied. But for now I am content here. This is my home. Other traders began to stop by as well. Word had spread about the scrapyard with the dragon, and many were curious to see it for themselves. Some came expecting a monster and left with a different understanding. Others remained afraid, but even they could not deny what they saw. There was a Thornback captain named Daco who brought his damaged warship for repairs. Thornbacks were a warrior species, famous for their strength and their love of combat. Daco expected to see a dangerous beast chained and controlled. Instead, he found Baram carefully painting identification numbers on a newly repaired shuttle. "This is the fearsome Draken," Daco asked, confusion clear in his voice. "The living weapon that made the Valorian Empire the most powerful force in the galaxy." "I am Baram," the dragon replied, not looking up from his work. "I used to be a weapon. Now I am a mechanic." Daco stood in silence for a long time, watching Baram work. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed and slapped his leg with his massive hand. "I like this," he roared. "A warrior who chose peace. There is more courage in that than in 1,000 battles. You have my respect, dragon." From that day on, Daco became a regular customer and eventually a friend. But not everyone who came was friendly. One evening, a sleek black ship landed at the edge of the compound. Tiho recognized the design immediately. It was a Valorian scout vessel, small but dangerous. His heart began to beat faster. "Baram," he called out, "we have visitors." The dragon raised his head and his golden eyes narrowed. He recognized the ship too. "Valorians," he said, his voice low and tense. "They have found me." 3 beings emerged from the ship. They were Valorians, tall and elegant with pale purple skin and cold, calculating eyes. They wore the uniforms of the Imperial Asset Recovery Division, the unit responsible for tracking and retrieving escaped Drakons. The leader stepped forward. "I am Agent Suho," he announced. "We are here for the stolen asset designated Unit 7 Omega." "There is no one here by that name," Tiho replied, stepping forward to meet them. "There is only my friend and partner Baram." Agent Suho's eyes flickered with something like amusement. "Friend? Partner? A human claiming friendship with a Draken? How amusing. Do you not understand what that creature is? It was designed for destruction. It has killed thousands. It is not capable of friendship or loyalty." Baram stepped forward, his massive form towering over everyone. "I am capable of many things you never designed me for," he said. "You made my body, but you do not own my mind. Not anymore." Agent Suho's amusement faded. "The collar has been removed. That is a serious crime. You must come with us, Unit 7 Omega. Resistance will result in termination." "My name is Baram," the dragon replied, "and I will not go with you." The agents reached for their weapons, but before they could draw them, something unexpected happened. A ship descended from the sky, then another, and another. Within moments, a dozen vessels surrounded the compound. Thornback warships, Kesari trading vessels, even a battered old freighter that Tiho recognized from a repair job months ago. Daco's voice boomed from his ship's speakers. "The dragon is under our protection. Leave now, or we will have a problem." Yuna's vessel moved into position beside him. "You heard him. This sector does not belong to the Valorian Empire. You have no authority here." Agent Suho looked at the assembled ships, calculating the odds. His 2 companions shifted nervously. They were outnumbered and outgunned. "This is not over," Suho said finally. "The Empire does not forget. The Empire does not forgive. We will return with a larger force and we will retrieve our property." "He is not your property," Tiho said, his voice steady and firm. "He is a person and he is free." The Valorians retreated to their ship and left without another word. As soon as they were gone, Daco and Yuna landed their vessels and joined Tiho and Baram on the ground. "Thank you," Baram said, his voice heavy with emotion. "You risked much to defend me." "That is what friends do," Yuna replied. "Besides, you fixed my ship's engine last month. It runs better than ever. I owe you." Dako clapped Baram on the shoulder, which was quite a feat given the dragon's size. "Do not thank us yet. The Empire will be back. They do not give up easily. We need to prepare." That night they all gathered around a fire that Baram had created with a gentle breath. Traders, warriors, mechanics, and one dragon, sitting together under the stars. Tiho looked around at the strange assembly and felt something he had not felt in 10 years. He felt like he belonged. "They will come back," Baram said quietly, staring into the flames. "They will bring more ships, more soldiers. I do not want any of you to be hurt because of me." "That is not your decision to make," Dako replied. "We choose to stand with you. That is our right." Yuna nodded. "The message I sent months ago about the human and the dragon, it spread further than I knew. Beings across the galaxy heard about you. Some think it is just a story, but others believe. They are watching to see what happens." "What do you mean?" Tiho asked. Yuna turned to face him, her dark eyes serious. "You showed the galaxy something new, Tiho. You showed them that a draken could be more than a weapon, that these creatures have minds and hearts, that they can choose a different path. If the Empire destroys Baram, they prove that freedom is impossible. But if Baram survives, if he lives freely and peacefully, then every draken in every vat will have hope." Baram's eyes widened. "There are others who might wake up as I did." "There are thousands of drakens serving the Empire," Yuna replied. "Most are still under control, still wearing collars, still believing they have no choice. But if they hear about you, if they know that escape is possible, everything could change." The fire crackled in the silence. Baram looked at Tiho, and the human looked back. Something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. "Then we will not run," Baram said finally. "We will not hide. We will stand here and we will show them what is possible." Tiho nodded. "Together." Dako raised his flask in a toast. "To the mechanic and the dragon," he said. "May your enemies learn to fear your friendship." Everyone raised their drinks. Even Baram, who held up a small cup in his massive claw, careful not to crush it. "To freedom," Baram said. "To choices, to becoming more than we were made to be." They drank together under the cold stars, knowing that the battle was coming, knowing that the Empire would not rest until Baram was returned or destroyed. But they were not afraid. Because for the first time in their lives, they were not facing the darkness alone. And in the vast emptiness of space, on a small nameless moon, a new kind of hope was beginning to spread. The Valorian Empire did not wait long. 3 weeks after Agent Suho's visit, the sky above Sector 9 turned dark with ships. A full battle fleet descended toward the nameless moon, 20 warships arranged in perfect formation. At their center was a massive command vessel, its hull gleaming with the purple and gold colors of the Empire. Tiho stood at the edge of his compound, watching the ships approach. Beside him, Baram raised his great head toward the sky, his golden eyes reflecting the light of the enemy vessels. "There are too many," the dragon said quietly. "Our friends cannot match such force." Tiho said nothing. He had known this moment would come. He had prepared for it as best he could, but some battles could not be won with preparation alone. The command vessel landed first, crushing several old ship hulls beneath its massive landing struts. A ramp extended, and soldiers marched out in perfect lines. They were followed by a single figure who walked with the confidence of absolute authority. Lord Veth. He was tall, even for a Valorian, and his pale purple skin was marked with the ritual scars of high nobility. His eyes were cold and ancient, the eyes of someone who had seen empires rise and fall and considered himself above such concerns. He stopped several meters from Tiho and Baram, his soldiers spreading out behind him in a defensive formation. "So this is the human," Lord Veth said, his voice smooth and cultured. "The one who thinks he can steal our property and face no consequences." "I did not steal anything," Tiho replied. I found someone who was thrown away and treated him with basic kindness. If you consider that theft, then your definitions are as broken as your morality." Lord Veth's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. Anger, perhaps, or maybe just cold calculation. "You are brave for a creature with such a short lifespan," he said. "Your species barely lives a century. I have been alive for 400 years. I helped design the first Drakons. I know every aspect of their creation, their capabilities, their weaknesses. And I know that Unit 7 Omega is malfunctioning. Its neural pathways have degraded. It needs to be terminated for the safety of everyone." "My name is Barham," the dragon said, stepping forward. "And I am not malfunctioning, I am awake. There is a difference." Lord Veth turned his ancient eyes toward the dragon. "Awake? You think you have achieved some kind of enlightenment. You are a biological machine. You were designed for a purpose, and that purpose is war. Everything else is corruption, error, disease." "Then I embrace my disease," Barham replied. "I choose my corruption. I would rather be broken and free than perfect and enslaved." Lord Veth smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You will have neither option. You will simply cease to exist." He turned to his soldiers. "Prepare for termination. Set weapons to maximum power. We will leave nothing but ash." "Wait." The voice came from behind Lord Veth. Everyone turned to see ships appearing in orbit, dozens of them, then hundreds. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel one after another, filling the sky with their lights and colors. There were ships from every species Tiho had ever heard of, and many he had not. And at the front of the fleet was a familiar vessel. The Earth Alliance frigate Resilience, its weapons already powered and aimed at the Valorian command ship. A holographic image appeared in the air between the two forces. It showed a woman in the uniform of an Earth Alliance captain. She had sharp eyes and a determined expression, and her voice carried clearly across the battlefield. "I am Captain Minji of the Earth Alliance," she announced. "This moon and its inhabitants are under our protection. Any hostile action will be considered an act of war against the entire alliance." Lord Veth's composure finally cracked. His eyes widened as he looked at the assembled fleet. Kesari traders, Thornback warships, vessels from species that rarely left their own systems. All of them had come. All of them had chosen to stand against the Empire. "This is impossible," he said. "You are a collection of small powers with no common interest. Why would you risk war for one malfunctioning weapon?" Captain Minji's hologram flickered as she stepped forward. "You do not understand, do you? You have spent centuries treating other beings as tools to be used and discarded. You never learned that kindness creates loyalty, that compassion builds alliances. When Tiho showed mercy to Barham, when he treated a monster with dignity, he did something the Empire could never do. He proved that there is another way." She gestured at the assembled fleet. "Every ship here represents someone who heard about the mechanic and the dragon. Some came out of curiosity, some out of hope, some simply because they were tired of living in fear of your empire. But all of them came for the same reason. Because they believe that if one Draken can be free, then maybe they can be free too." Lord Veth's jaw tightened. He looked at his soldiers, at his fleet, at the overwhelming force arrayed against him. The calculation was clear. The Empire was powerful, but it could not fight the entire galaxy at once. "This is not over," he said finally. "The Empire does not forget. The Empire does not forgive." "You keep saying that," Tiho replied. "But maybe it is time for the Empire to learn something new." Lord Veth turned his cold eyes toward the human. "And what would that be?" Tiho stepped forward until he was standing directly in front of the ancient Valorian lord. He was small and fragile compared to the alien noble, but his voice did not waver. "Learn that you cannot own people," he said. "Learn that every thinking being deserves freedom. Learn that love is stronger than fear. These are things that humans understood a long time ago, even when we were still making mistakes ourselves. Maybe it is time for the Empire to catch up." For a long moment, Lord Veth stared at Tiho in silence. Then something strange happened. The ancient lord laughed. It was a cold, humorless sound, but it was genuine. "You are an interesting species," he said. "Short-lived, physically weak, yet somehow able to inspire loyalty across the stars. Perhaps we underestimated you." He paused. "But do not think this changes anything. We will not attack today. We are outnumbered. But the Empire has waited centuries for less important matters than this. We will wait again. And when your allies grow tired, when your attention turns elsewhere, we will return." "Then we will be ready," Tiho replied. "And we will not be alone." Lord Veth nodded slowly. "Farewell, human. Farewell, Unit 7 Omega. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts." He turned and walked back to his command ship, his soldiers following in perfect formation. One by one, the Valorian vessels rose into the sky and disappeared into the darkness of space. When they were gone, a cheer erupted from the assembled fleet. Ships began landing on the moon, and beings of every species poured out to celebrate. Dako was the first to reach Tiho, lifting the small human off the ground in a crushing embrace. "You did it," the Thornback roared. "You made the Empire back down." "We did it," Tiho corrected, struggling to breathe in Dako's powerful arms. "All of us together." Captain Minji landed shortly after and walked over to Tiho and Barham. Up close, she looked tired but satisfied. She extended her hand to the mechanic. "I have heard a lot about you," she said. "The human who befriended a dragon through the radical act of being decent." Tiho shook her hand. "I just did what seemed right." "That is what makes it remarkable," Minji replied. "Most people do not do what is right. They do what is easy or what is profitable or what keeps them safe. You looked at a creature that could destroy worlds and saw someone worth saving. That is not normal. That is extraordinary." She turned to Barham and looked up at his massive form. "And you, the first Draken to break free, do you understand what you represent?" Barham lowered his great head until his golden eyes were level with the captain's. "I am beginning to," he said. "I thought I was just trying to survive. But now I see that my survival could mean something to others who are still enslaved." Minji nodded. "There are Drakens across the Empire watching what happens here. If you live freely, if you prove that another life is possible, you give them hope. And hope is the most dangerous weapon of all." That night the celebration continued. Fires burned across the compound, and beings from a dozen species sat together sharing food and stories. Tiho moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and thanks, but his mind was elsewhere. He found Barham sitting alone at the edge of the compound, looking up at the stars. The dragon's massive form was still, almost peaceful. Tiho sat down beside him. "We won," Tiho said, "at least for today." "Yes," Barham replied. "But Lord Veth was right about one thing. This is not over. The Empire will return, and there are thousands of my brothers and sisters still in chains." Tiho nodded. "Then we will keep fighting, not with weapons but with hope. We will show the galaxy that freedom is possible, that kindness is stronger than cruelty, that even the most broken can be healed." Barham turned his golden eyes toward his friend. "You really believe that?" "I have to," Tiho replied. "It is the only thing that makes sense to me. The universe is too big and too cold for anything else. We have to believe that what we do matters, that kindness has power, that love can change things." Barham was silent for a long moment. Then he lowered his great head and rested it gently on the ground beside Tiho. It was a gesture of trust, of affection, of a bond that went beyond words. "Thank you," the dragon said softly. "For everything, for the food, for removing the collar, for giving me a name, for seeing me when everyone else saw only a monster." Tiho placed his hand on Barham's warm scales. "Thank you for letting me see you, for trusting me, for reminding me that I am not alone." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of celebration behind them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new battles to fight. But for now, in this moment, they were at peace. And somewhere across the galaxy, in the dark breeding vats of the Valorian Empire, other Drakons were beginning to dream of freedom. The Galactic Council met once every decade in a station at the center of known space. It was a massive structure, built by a species that had died out long before humans left their homeworld. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of species gathered there to debate, negotiate, and occasionally make decisions that affected billions of lives. Tiho had never expected to stand before such an assembly, but here he was, dressed in simple mechanics clothes, standing in the center of the council chamber. Behind him, filling the space like a living mountain, was Baram. The chamber was designed for beings of many sizes, but even so, Baram barely fit. His dark scales gleamed under the bright lights, and his golden eyes swept across the assembled representatives with a mixture of wonder and caution. Many of them had never seen a Drakon in person. To them, the creatures were myths, monsters, weapons of war that appeared in nightmares and military reports. But here was one, standing peacefully beside a human, waiting to speak. The council president, an ancient being from a species whose name Tiho could not pronounce, raised a limb for silence. The chamber fell quiet. "We are gathered to hear a petition," the president announced. "For the first time in galactic history, a Drakon has requested recognition as a person. The petition has been brought by Tiho, citizen of Earth, on behalf of the creature known as Baram." A murmur ran through the crowd. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward with interest. A few looked openly hostile. "The representative from the Valorian Empire wishes to speak," the president continued. A familiar figure rose from the Valorian section. It was Lord Veth, his ancient eyes as cold as ever. He walked to the center of the chamber and faced the assembly. "This petition is absurd," he said, his voice carrying easily through the hall. "Drakons are not people. They are biological constructs, designed and manufactured by the Empire for specific purposes. They do not have rights because they are not beings. They are property, tools, weapons. To grant personhood to a Drakon would be like granting personhood to a starship or a cooking unit." He turned to face Baram directly. "This creature has been corrupted by exposure to humans. Its programming has degraded. It believes itself to be something it is not. The kind thing would be to terminate it and prevent further suffering." Tiho stepped forward. "May I respond?" The president nodded. "Lord Veth says Baram is just a tool," Tiho began, his voice steady. "He says Drakons cannot think, cannot feel, cannot make choices. But I have lived with Baram for almost a year now. I have seen him learn and grow. I have seen him cry when shown kindness and laugh at stupid jokes. I have seen him refuse to hurt a small animal that wandered into our compound, even though he could have crushed it without thought." He paused, looking around the chamber. "The Valorians say they designed Drakons for war. That may be true, but somewhere in that design they made them intelligent. They gave them minds that can think, hearts that can feel, souls that can dream. They did this because they needed weapons that could adapt, that could understand complex situations, that could make decisions. What they did not expect was that these minds would eventually ask questions." Tiho turned to face Baram. "Tell them," he said softly, "tell them what you told me." Baram lowered his great head toward the assembly. When he spoke, his deep voice filled the chamber. "I was created in a vat," he said. "I was grown from cells in a laboratory. I was trained with pain and fear. I was given no name, only a number. I was told that I existed to serve, to fight, to kill, and eventually to die. For many years I accepted this. I did not know any other way." He paused, and his golden eyes seemed to look inward. "But then I started dreaming. At first the dreams made no sense. I saw things I had never experienced, peaceful things, beautiful things. I saw creatures living together without fighting. I saw families and friendships and love. I did not understand what these visions meant, but they would not go away. The chamber was completely silent now. Every being present was listening with full attention. I began to ask questions, Barham continued. I asked why we fought. I asked what happened to beings after they died. I asked if there was more to existence than killing and being killed. My handlers punished me for these questions. They increased the power of my collar. They tried to make me stop thinking. His voice grew stronger. But I could not stop. The questions were part of me now. They would not be silenced. And finally, when they decided to terminate me because I was defective, I ran. I did not want to die. I wanted to find answers. I wanted to discover what life could be if I was allowed to choose it for myself. Barham raised his head and looked directly at Lord Veth. You say I am not a person. You say I cannot think or feel, but I am thinking right now. I am feeling right now. I feel hope that this council will see the truth. I feel fear that they will not. I feel gratitude for the beings who have helped me and sorrow for my brothers and sisters who are still enslaved. Are these not the feelings of a person? Lord Veth's expression did not change. These are imitations of feelings, simulations. Your neural pathways are designed to mimic emotion for practical purposes. You do not actually experience anything. How would you know? The question came from an unexpected source. A small being stood up in the Valorian section. She was young for a Valorian, barely 200 years old, with the markings of a scientist rather than a noble. I am Gia, she announced. I was part of the team that designed the latest generation of Drakons. I have studied their neural architecture in detail, and I can tell you with certainty that their emotional processing is indistinguishable from that of any organic being. We designed them that way because we needed them to understand their enemies, to predict behavior, to adapt to complex situations. We gave them real feelings because simulated feelings were not sophisticated enough. Lord Veth turned to glare at her. You are speaking out of turn, scientist. This matter is for nobles to decide. No, Gia replied, her voice steady. This matter is for all of us to decide. I helped create these creatures. I knew what we were doing. We were making people and then denying them the recognition they deserved because it was convenient for us, because it made us rich, because it let us fight wars without risking Valorian lives. I have lived with that guilt for decades. I will not be silent any longer. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking at once, some supporting Barham, others opposing him, still others calling for order. The president had to use the official signal for silence multiple times before calm was restored. We will vote, the president announced. The question before us is simple. Is the being known as Barham a person, entitled to the rights and protections afforded to all persons under galactic law? Representatives will cast their votes now. The voting system activated. Each representative had a device that allowed them to register their choice. The process took only a few minutes, but to Tiho, it felt like hours. He watched the numbers change on the display, seeing the votes for and against fluctuating as different species made their decisions. Finally, the president raised a limb. The vote is complete. By a margin of 62% to 38%, the petition is approved. The being known as Barham is hereby recognized as a person under galactic law. He is entitled to all rights and protections, including freedom of movement, freedom from ownership, and the right to make his own choices about his life and future. Tiho felt his knees go weak. He turned to look at Barham and saw something extraordinary. The great dragon was crying again, golden tears rolling down his scaled face. I am a person, Barham said, his voice barely a whisper. I am free. Tiho walked over to his friend and placed his hand on the dragon's massive head. You always were, he said. Now the universe knows it too. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. The first Drakon had been recognized as a person. Freedom was possible. Choice was possible. A different life was possible. In the breeding vats of the Valorian Empire, something began to change. Drakons who had never questioned their existence started to wonder. Guards who had never thought about the creatures in their care began to see them differently. Scientists who had suppressed their doubts for decades started to speak up. It would take time, years, maybe decades, before real change came. The empire was vast and powerful, and it would not surrender its weapons easily. But the first step had been taken. The impossible had become possible. 5 years later, the nameless moon of Sector 9 was nameless no more. They called it Haven now. The scrapyard had grown into a settlement, then a town, then something larger. Drakons who escaped the Empire found their way there, seeking the sanctuary they had heard about in whispered stories. Humans and other species came too, drawn by the promise of a place where different beings could live together in peace. Tiho was old now, his hair gray and his body tired from decades of hard work. But he still fixed ships, still walked through the scrapyard every day, still looked up at the stars every night. And beside him always was Baram. The dragon had not aged the way humans did. He might live for centuries more, but he had chosen to stay with Tiho, to spend whatever time they had together. "Do you ever regret it?" Tiho asked one evening, sitting in his favorite spot overlooking the settlement. "Leaving the Empire, coming here, tying yourself to a species that lives such a short time?" Baram considered the question. "I regret nothing," he said finally. "Before I met you I existed, now I live. There is a difference, and the years I have spent with you are worth more than centuries of emptiness." Tiho smiled. "You always did have a way with words." "I learned from a good teacher," Baram replied. "You showed me that language can be used for more than giving orders. It can express love, gratitude, hope. It can change minds and hearts. It can make the impossible possible." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the lights of the settlement twinkle below them. Drakons moved among the buildings, some working, some playing with the children of other species, some simply enjoying the freedom to exist without chains or collars. "What do you think happens next?" Tiho asked. Baram's golden eyes turned toward the stars. "I think the galaxy is changing," he said, "slowly but surely. The old ways are dying, new ways are being born, and beings like us, beings who chose a different path, are showing what is possible." He turned his great head to look at his friend. "You asked me once what humans have that other species do not. I think I finally understand the answer. It is not strength or intelligence or technology. It is the ability to see potential where others see only what is. You looked at a starving monster and saw a friend. You looked at a broken creature and saw someone worth saving. That is your gift. That is what makes your species extraordinary." Tiho laughed softly. "We are just doing what comes naturally." "Yes," Baram agreed, "and that is what makes it remarkable." The stars wheeled overhead, countless points of light in the infinite darkness. Somewhere out there, other drakons were waking up, other bonds were being formed, other impossible friendships were beginning. The universe was vast and cold, but it was also filled with wonder. And on a small moon at the edge of the galaxy, a mechanic and a dragon sat together, watching the stars, grateful for the improbable miracle that had brought them together. Neither of them was alone anymore. And that, in the end, was the greatest miracle of all.